Dr. Kamani, licensed clinical psychologist, and I am here talking about ways to support Black women in toxic work environments in terms of our healing journey. I want to thank everyone who's joined in. We had a little technical difficulties the first round, so hopefully this time it works. My channel is called Lifting As We Climb Consulting Wellness Services. If you're interested in learning more about the work that we do in relation to supporting individual and collective healing, please check out my website or my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel has all of the videos that have talked about ways to support Black women healing and toxic work environments. And I am providing a platform for us to talk about this so that we know that we're not alone, that we know that we're not victims of what has happened to us. We are victors because we're standing up and speaking out about it, because we know that silencing is a form of oppression. And also for us to know that healing is possible. And that's why I'm bringing on different guests, because I want you to hear from different Black women in different professions to show that the experiences are very common, right? So it might not be the same, but there's similar patterns that we're seeing in these environments, because we know, unfortunately, that Black women have higher rates of experiencing toxic work environments. So we're here to say, we're standing up about it. We're speaking up. We're sharing information with other women, other Black women, about ways to heal. Also, I've received some feedback from some Black men who've also said they've had experiences in toxic work environments, and they were asking, well, what about us? Are you going to talk about Black men as well? And I just want to be clear that I do experiences, happen with Black men as well. And I'm not ignoring that. But I'm speaking from the perspective as a Black woman, because I'm a Black woman. And there's Deidra. Hello,
Yay, we
Deidra.
figured it out.
We made it happen. Yes. Instagram was trying to work against us, but it's okay. We made it happen. Well, Deidra, I was just telling everyone for the second round that we were having some technical difficulties. I want to thank everyone for their patience in terms of us working this out. And Deidra, I want to just say thank you for your patience as well as we try to figure this out too. So I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Deidre Fogerty. I am a master educator. I've actually worked in education for the past 16 years. I currently am a full-time entrepreneur and a consultant. So I help to support the development of educators, particularly Black women educators. And this topic is just something that is so near and dear to me, just because it's something I have experienced. I've talked about it a lot on this platform, and I, come across a lot of educators who have experienced this as well. So I'm just so glad that we were able to connect with one another and that you're bringing this topic to light. And so I'm just excited to be here to talk about it.
Yes, Deidre. And it's so fascinating because there's so many people who experienced it across professions. And when I first started the conversation, it was just going to be the month of October for Bullying Prevention Month. But then more Black women start coming and say, what about me and my experience? And I'm this and I'm that. And it happens in these fields as well. And so what I would love to hear, what I would love for you to share with the audience is your experience of being in a toxic work environment and the impact that it had on you.
Yeah, so I've actually worked in, I would say, several toxic work environments. Primarily working in schools, where there was often just a culture of, we're just going to do whatever it takes to whatever that meant, right? So that means if you had to work long hours, if you had to stay late, come in early, all of those things, but then you also just couldn't complain about it. You couldn't go against if the leadership said a specific thing and you went against it, like somebody would come and talk to you. It was just always one of those things. And for me, I am a very outspoken individual. I have a lot of expertise in education. So when I would have leaders that, might have had less experience than I did, and when I had leaders who realized I had influence, they would feel threatened by me if I like raised my hand and said, well, I don't know if that's the approach we should take, or they would feel
Mm-hmm.
threatened by it. So they
Mm-hmm.
were creating environments where there was not a lot of psychological safety. People did not feel like
Mm-hmm.
it was safe to be able to
Mm-hmm.
speak up, because it was also a charter school environment. And
Mm-hmm.
in many charter schools, you're an at-will employee. So at
Wow.
any time, you could be fired or
Mm-hmm.
non-renewed. And that was always a fear for many teachers. And
Yeah.
for me, I got to a point where I was just like, listen, if this is what you're going to fire me for speaking up and advocating for the kids, then that's just what it is.
Right.
But it was to the point where I would feel like I would have to either like not be my authentic self, silence myself, and just be like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on my students. I'm just going to close the door and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to, because I'm fighting so hard for other teachers, for my students, and not being appreciated. And it was really draining. It was really,
Yeah.
really draining. And it made me start to shrink myself.
Ooh.
And that's when I started to realize like this is not, if I stay in this environment, like I'm not going to be able to do all the things that I know I'm supposed to be doing. I knew that wasn't going to be
Yes.
able to happen.
Yes. Deidre, and in terms of what you were saying and feeling like the environment was not supporting you, not only in terms of offering a difference of opinion or just, being allowed to just grow.
Right.
You had to fit into this cookie cutter way of being. And if you didn't, then it's kind of like smack you back in your place, right?
Absolutely.
And it sounds like a lot of your peers kind of fell into this fear mentality and they didn't want to kind of rock the boat.
Yep.
But you realize, Deidre, I can't function like that. I'm not being my authentic self. I am shrinking,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm not growing, I'm shrinking, and this is harming me. And so I'm wondering, because your story in so many ways aligns with, experiences that I've had too. So you talked about also people in positions of leadership feeling threatened by you, right? So
Right.
if you spoke up, then that was seen as you're questioning authority or you're threatening or things like that, right?
Yep.
Or you're doing something that's not really of benefit.
Right.
So I'm wondering, Deidre, given that your colleagues, I see people saying, I rock boats every day, laugh out loud. Exactly. So in terms of rocking the boat, right? What is it about you that was different from your colleagues in terms of rocking the boat? You were like, I'm going to keep rocking the boat. But your colleagues were like, no, let's just kind of just stay like it is. Let's just try to coast. What's different
Yeah,
about you?
I think honestly, for me, I have a very high level of confidence when it comes to my ability to do my job effectively as an educator. So I know, like, at the end of the day, like, I know a lot of folks can't do what I can do. And so finding a job elsewhere is really not a problem. Like, that wasn't a fear for me, because at the end of the day, I know how to teach. You can put me in whatever grade, whatever subject area, whatever, put me wherever you want, and I'm going to make it
Mm-hmm.
happen. And so, so that for me, like knowing that I was a master educator, that I am a master educator, that gave me a lot of
Mm-hmm.
confidence. And also on top of, that, like my owning my expertise and knowing that I was good at that, I also had a certain amount of leadership skills as well as communication skills, where
Mm-hmm.
I am comfortable with, being able to speak in an assertive manner. I am comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with being able to have difficult conversations. So those things didn't necessarily intimidate me.
Mm-hmm.
And I strongly just believe in everything that I was advocating for was for the benefit of my students. And
Right.
I always would say, well, if I'm not advocating for them, who is? Like, because
Right.
everybody's scared. Everybody's scared to
Yeah.
say something. And I was most of my career I taught in Washington D.C. and a lot of times my students, they needed someone to be able to advocate for them in those meetings. And
Mm-hmm.
even if it was just me, and even if I was labeled as, the villain or whatever it was, like I knew at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, I was doing the right thing for my students. And
Right.
I was willing to, if that meant that, you're not going to want me to be at your school the next year, that's fine. Like
Because I don't want to be here either if I can't
right.
speak
And
my truth,
and I
right?
knew there were multiple options that were out there. I was also building my own business. So it was kind of
Hmm.
just like, Like, I'm going to do what's right at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's how I've always been, even from the beginning of my career, where it's like, if this is what's right for children and I'm advocating for them, then I know that, like, that what I'm doing is right. And some people, it
Yes.
just takes a while for them to realize it. And, you know, this is the way it is. Like, back then, I didn't know, like, this is how people sometimes are receptive to folks who are trying to, like, disrupt things or, you know, speak
Mhm.
against things. But now I'm just so hip to the game where, you know, especially at the previous school I was at, I was just like, this is what y'all do. And back
Mhm.
then I wasn't as prepared, but now I am. Now I am prepared. Now I know that this is how you're going to operate. It's still toxic. I still don't want to be here. It still
Mhm.
impacts me, but I feel like I was able to develop more of a shield,
Yes.
so that it didn't impact me as much as it had previously.
Yes. So you're talking about like the psychological armoring that you had. So as
Yes.
you're going into this workplace and you know that people are attacking you or discrediting you or not want to listen to you or labeling you, first of all, you are grounded in your worth. Like I know what I bring to the table. So all
Right.
that other stuff, whatever. And you talked about, I have options. So knowing our options is so important because then we don't feel stuck in situations that we
Yes.
don't, like, what am I doing here?
Right.
Now, how do you think that's different in terms of your colleagues? So how did they treat you as you started speaking up more? What was the response from them?
Yeah, I would have a lot of my colleagues who would come to me after the fact and thank me. They would just be like, "Oh my goodness, like you're so brave." A lot of my colleagues that I worked with at the time, many of them were newer into teaching, so they had maybe been
Mhm.
teaching a couple years, maybe 4 or 5 years at the most.
Mhm.
And when I at my school, oftentimes I was like the most experienced teacher. So they would oftentimes come to me for advice. They would often come to me, you know, just to be able to get that rational perspective. They were
Mhm.
aware that they were in a toxic environment as well, but there was
Mhm.
also the fear of, you
Yeah.
know, well, I don't want to like, I don't want to get fired. I don't want to lose the
Yeah.
opportunity to get promoted. And that
Mm.
was really real for them. Right. And I
Yeah.
know that oftentimes they would come to me as the person that would kind of just like provide them with guidance, provide them with courage, provide them with confidence, and to a certain extent, I was fine with that. But then there was
Mhm.
also part of me that was like, well, why do I have to be the only person in these meetings saying something? You all
Right.
can say stuff too,
Right.
right? You can, and then that's when I started feeling like, you know, well, don't back me up after the meeting. Back me up during the
Right.
meeting. Back me up when I'm the
Yes.
only one who's looking like I'm the only one who has an issue. And then it's like,
Yeah.
Fogarty, something's going on with Fogarty. Why is Fogarty? Because they call me Fogarty. Why does Fogarty always have something to say? But then you all are coming after the fact. And so I started to say that to them, like, where it was just like, listen, while I appreciate you coming to me and saying thank you, what I really appreciate is if when we're in the meeting, like we all need to be like locked in arms when we're
Mhm.
trying to advocate for something. And you
Right.
know, folks are not a lot of times they're not they didn't expect to hear that, but it's just like you need to hear it because it's just
Exactly.
not going to work where I'm going to be the only person saying something and then you're going to thank me after. That's not
Right.
going to
So
work.
like you're gonna push me out there so I take the hit, right? But
Right.
I'm speaking for all of us. And so we should
Absolutely.
be united because when we're united, they can't, divide us, right? But when it's
Absolutely.
just one person, they can focus on just the one person. I know that many people, myself included, can really relate to that. And so I remember my situation, I was always seen as like, oh, I know she's going to say something, right? And they would look to me like, oh, I know she's going to say something. But I'm like, well, you can say something too, because I know behind the
Right.
scenes, you've been saying things all along, right? So I
Yep.
just want to give a really quick example based upon what you were saying. So one time I was in a training and there was a man, a white man who got up and said he was going to show us this paradoxical intervention. And, just pay attention to the intervention. The intervention was this man, it was a white man, and it was a black mother and her son. And that the therapist, this is a therapist, and he starts saying to the boy, you are so dumb. You are really stupid, right? Then he turns to the mom and he says to the mom, how did you raise such a stupid child? How did you do it, right? So I'm sitting there fuming, right? And so I think one black person in the room during this training. And so I'm fuming. So when he finishes, he's really proud of it. He wants to say, oh, look, did you guys notice the paradoxical intervention? And I raised my hand. I said, as a Black woman, I found that very offensive. And I just kind of broke it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
He got offended, right? So he's going at me and he's like, well, I showed this to another Black man from the South and he was okay with it. And I said, well, maybe he had internalized racism. However, I'm going to tell you that that's very offensive.
Right.
So what was very interesting is that after nobody backed me up, nobody in the room, Black, what, nobody. And then once we went into break, people, I'm so glad you said something.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said something. And so again, what I want to just emphasize to the audience, there may be times where you may be the only one speaking up, but don't let that stop you from speaking up. Sometimes you, like you said, Deidre, there might be people that come to you after and say, oh, I'm so glad you did that. Call them out.
Right.
They need to speak up too, right?
Right.
So Deidre, can you share like what impact did that have on you? So being in that work environment, what did that impact have on you?
The impact that it had on me was I started to question, like the path that I was going on. Because at one point I really was interested in going into school leadership, and I just started feeling like I was too much. Where I just felt like I was just too much, and it felt like no matter
too much in what way? Can you elaborate?
Ooh,
too much in what way?
Okay, all right, let me elaborate. I feel like too much. I felt like no matter what I did, there was always some type of a problem, right? As soon as I opened my mouth and asked a question about something, because it felt a lot of times I would go to meet, because it wouldn't be with students. Like with students, everything's good, right? The teaching aspect of the job I love. But when we were in meetings and we're going through data, we're unpacking things with math, and in particular with literacy, because prior to this particular school, I was working as a literacy coach. So I was coaching teachers on literacy, then went back into the classroom as a teacher. And so there would be things that they would go through, and I'm like, we're teaching them in an incorrect way. And I wouldn't say that, but I would ask questions. I would say, well, why don't we, I would do those things. And every time I did that, it was like shut down. And so it made me feel like, it just made me start looking at my career path like, okay, well, maybe if this is not going to happen the way I thought it was going to happen, it made me feel like I needed to play the game, because I felt like that's what the other people on the grade level, or other people play the game. They're like, sometimes you just got to play the game, Fogarty. You just got to play the game. And I'm like, play the game for what? Like, what are we playing the game for? Because
who benefits, really?
It's
who
really
benefits really is
are you doing it for the pay? Because it's
right.
I mean, what are we playing the game for? It never sat well. I can't be fake. So if that's what you want me to do, play the game. And at the end of the day, do we not care about what's best for these children? And I don't know if maybe because they have never, like, for me, I've seen my students go from being second graders to being middle schoolers to being high schoolers, and seeing the impact of the decisions that they make and the impact it has on their life, right? And so I think about the school and how we in the school setting, like, how the big impact it has. So like, I'm just very passionate about this. So I don't take little things that other people would take lightly. I just don't, right? Like, I remember there was an incident where a teacher was like ripping up the students' work and just like throwing it in the garbage and being extra. And it was a teacher, and I just remember thinking, like, how is this okay?
Right.
Like, how is this okay? And maybe the teacher was frustrated. Maybe there were things going on. But the fact that we have school leaders who are seeing these things and it's not a big deal. And then the fact that a lot of times it was happening, these were with Black students and non-Black teachers. And I just felt like it was too much to see. And so for me, it just started making me feel, I guess, really defeated, feeling like maybe like education is just not like, is it possible? Like feeling like education was just never going to be fixed. There's always going to be problems with it. Like I was
Right.
just feeling extremely defeated. And I was starting to
Mm,
have that whole imposter syndrome thing where I was feeling like, okay, well, maybe I'm not as qualified as I think I am. Maybe I'm not, maybe
mm,
I don't really have the expertise that I think I have because clearly, like, it's not working in this situation. So I
right.
started developing and just doubting myself, which was a new feeling for me.
Yes. So the toxic work environment made you question yourself and question your profession, even though you knew you loved the profession.
Mm-hmm.
And you question like, where career direction am I going in? And it's interesting, Deidre, you also talked about people would say to you, you need to play the game.
Yep.
But for you, you were saying, first of all, this is not a game. These are lives of children.
Yep.
So there's no game involved here. And so why would you want to perpetuate a system that's oppressive? So when
Right.
we think about how can a teacher, anyone thrive in an environment where they're being oppressed, and then you expect them to then serve
Right.
people? That doesn't even add up. How does that even work? And so you were very aligned with your purpose, even though you had moments of questioning, like, is this the
Right.
right place for me? But you knew deep down the environment is messed up, right? The
Yep.
system is messed up. And so what was the moment that you said, Deidre, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here.
I think because, like I said, I've worked in a couple of toxic schools, and so
Hmm.
I feel like the moment the one of the big moments that I made like a big decision to leave, like more so like my last school, was because I was realizing that it was starting to just impact me in many different ways to the point where I feel like I was eating a lot more than I usually eat, like just ordering food.
Hmm.
I would come home, I would be tired, I would be over it. I would have to, I would want to, like, I was working on my business, but I just felt like so drained and so just over it that I wasn't even really having the capacity to work on my business like I wanted to. And even with, like, I
Mm,
have this platform, Black Girls Teach. My job is to, like, motivate and do all these things for educators, but I was feeling very defeated. I was feeling like, how am I supposed to motivate anybody when I'm just like, I don't know, maybe
you
I
feel
need to go back to
discouraged and you feel beat
right,
down.
right, right.
Yeah.
And I was just like, so it was impacting how I was showing up in my personal life and how I was showing up for my business.
Mm,
How it was just impacting those things. And that's when I was just
yeah.
like, I can't do this.
Okay. Okay. And when you made that decision of saying, I can't do this, what was that like? Right? Because a lot of people listening have been in that space where they're so unhappy with their jobs. They really want to leave, but they are fearful, like what's
Yes,
going to happen. And then they have people around them, family, friends, girl, don't leave that job. They're giving them that kind of feedback. So
absolutely.
what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so I'll share in two ways. So when I moved from, like, one school to another, so that was me realizing that when I decided I needed to start applying elsewhere, like, it was me saying, you know what? There are schools, there are children out there who need great teachers. I don't have to be here. I can do
Hmm.
my job and make an impact and go somewhere else. And
Hmm.
I still knew, like I can find a job as a teacher. That's not an issue. So
Right.
the issue sometimes that I find, like, working with teachers, is the hassle of, like, updating your resume, filling out the
Hmm.
application, and getting your references, and what if your principal finds out, all of
Hmm.
those type of barriers. But for
Hmm.
me, it was just like, I knew, I said, okay, I paid and I got my resume updated. I started hitting up the different contacts that I had, and then I was able to I just was thinking about it in a very logical thing where I'm like, this is just what I'm doing. And the biggest thing
Hmm.
for me was I had to, like, which was a very hard thing, because I wanted to stay there for my students. I wanted to be there
Hmm.
because of my students. I knew they needed me, but I had to,
Hmm.
like, kind of be like, I can't make decisions based upon my students. I cannot.
Yeah.
I know they need
Yeah.
me, but I can't be thinking about them at this moment. I have to do what's best
Yeah.
for me. And I'll say,
Absolutely.
the other time, like the last time when I made the decision just to, like, resign from my position and just go into entrepreneurship full time, that was something that I didn't tell anybody. And I didn't tell
Oh,
anybody because I was like, I don't want anybody in my ear. I don't want anybody
yes.
telling me, you, because it was already starting to happen when I would bring it up. And I would say, I want to give 6 months to this business. Like, I want to do it. I had saved up
Mm-hmm.
money. I had like planned for this to happen at some point, and the time
Mm-hmm.
came where I was like, it's go time. But I made the decision not to tell. I maybe told like one or two people, but I knew who I couldn't tell, because I was like, I don't want to hear their fears and their anxiousness and their all the
Projecting
things.
on you.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that. So I
Yeah.
had to make the decision for myself, and do the things that I need to do to plan accordingly. But it also
Yeah.
was like, especially when I resigned from my job and going into entrepreneurship, it was very scary. It was a very, very scary feeling. But at the end of the day, like, it was something I had always planned for, and I knew that there was never going to be the time where I was going to feel completely ready. I knew that as
Right.
long as, like, I wanted to make sure that I was financially ready to make this decision, and I had a plan in
Yeah.
place. And once I was, I did it, and I said, I'm out. But I didn't tell a whole bunch of people,
Yes.
because even when I was like, after I had done it, and I was like, people thought I was still working. They thought I was still teaching. And I was like, okay, you could, I'm not going to make a big announcement about it, because it's still something to me that is a very personal decision that not everybody's going to understand. So even if you're
Yeah.
just going from one job to the next, or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
may be, it doesn't have to be something that you share with everyone, because a
Yeah.
lot of times it's, I love family members and things like that, but sometimes, some folks are going to want you to stay that traditional path. Just stick it out, make it work,
Yes.
stay there until retirement. And I'm like,
Right.
what? I can't do
Right.
that.
Like, I don't even think I can make it to retirement,
Right.
right? Like, this is
Right.
killing me. I don't think I can make it that long. And it's interesting, Deidre, you said something that was really, really good. So number one, in terms of self-preservation, if you work with kids or whomever you work with, many times we love the work. We love who we work with. It's not them that's the issue. It's like
Right.
other people. But we have to make sure that we're okay, because we can't really do anything for them if we're not okay. The other thing that you really said is so valuable. I hope that people really listen to this. Test the waters, right? So don't go and tell everybody your business what you're about to do. You can like just drop a little nugget here and see how they respond. And that will tell you who you want to tell or not.
Right.
But ultimately, you're very clear with, I'm getting out of here, right? So I
Right.
have an exit plan. So, and one last thing is that you talked about fear is going to be there. So don't feel like you need to wait to start your own thing because until you have no fear. The fear is going to be there, but you need to do it anyway. But as long as you have your stuff organized
Right.
and you're getting things together, it's less like, okay, well, I know I'm on a path, but the fear is not going to be totally gone.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that sometimes we expect to have a moment where we're just going to feel 100% ready, and that's just not the case. Like, that you're not
Right.
going to, even if you're transitioning from one job to the next, or sometimes we just feel like, okay, like, that's not going to be scary. It still is going to be scary, because now
Mm-hmm.
you're starting over. You don't know what this other
Yeah.
job is going to be like, especially when you're going from a toxic situation to a new place. Like, I remember going from one school to another, just really nervous, because I did not
Mm,
want to be in the same type of situation again. So I was really trying
right.
to be very intentional during the interview process. And this is what I teach a lot of teachers, where it's like, I went into some things like where I'm like, well, I'm interviewing this school. I'm going to ask these questions. I'm going to try to get as much as I know, as I need to know. And I always tell teachers now, like, think about the things that you really value as an
Mm-hmm.
educator. How can you come up with a question that you can ask the person who's interviewing to see if
Mm-hmm.
there is alignment? Because there are some ways that we can start to, I mean, it's not 100% possible where you can completely see if an organization is toxic or not. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are going through the interview process, you can ask certain questions just to get a gauge of how they respond to it. And I know for me,
Mm-hmm.
it was really important to work somewhere where I would be able to get to be able to get to give feedback, right? So like, that might be a question I ask during the interview process where I'm saying, can you tell me about a time where you've had a teacher who have given you feedback?
Excellent.
Like what was,
Yes.
because sometimes people are afraid to do that because they're like, well, I'm not going to get the job. Well, that means you didn't get the job. That should be a blessing to you, because if they're not
Right. And
hiring
if you
you,
can't speak up during an interview, that's a sign, right?
right. That's what I say. So if they're not hiring you because you're asking these tough questions, then that is a blessing. You got to keep
Yes.
it
You don't
moving.
belong.
So
You don't
that's
need
why
to be there.
we have to like start really looking out for red flags and start asking
Mm-hmm.
questions to gauge. And meaning you're not gonna, again, like some places are very good at like hiding certain things and saying the right
Mm-hmm.
things, but like I would rather more of us start to really, especially if you're applying to new jobs, you really start thinking about like, what do I value in a job? Try to
Mm-hmm.
determine if this place is the right fit for you.
Yes. So alignment is key.
Yeah.
And you talked about like ways that you support other teachers, and you talked about like doing your own thing. Any regrets, Deidre, about moving on and doing your own thing?
No, I have no regrets at
I didn't
all.
think so. I didn't think so. I
I
think,
don't. I
and
don't.
can you
Mm.
share with the audience a little bit in terms of your own healing journey? So you started your own business. What other things were involved in your healing journey?
Well, I really believe that I had a strong community of Black women that were just in my corner. And a lot of them were, former coworkers who became friends, who
Hmm.
understood the dynamic of like some of the situations that we had. Sometimes we had experienced these things together. And so
Mm,
they understood, they just understood like my passion. They understood why I wanted to do some of the things that I wanted to do in terms of just like building an organization. And I just never felt like I was, well, I had moments where I would feel like I was alone, but they reminded me that I was not alone. Like I wasn't. They reminded
mm,
me that that I'm not crazy. I'm not a bad person. All of these things that I think our inner voice tells us when we're going through
mhm.
situations like this, they were able to like bring me back down and say, no, like this just they were able to see that. And I think
Yes,
that was really, really key, being able to have people that I could talk to about
yes.
this experience. That was really
And
key for me.
also, Deidre, what you're saying too is that they helped you reality test, because a lot of times we're in these toxic environments. The gaslighting does make you
Yes,
question yourself. Like, did I say something? What did I do? So you start going through this self-reflection, but it becomes like a self-doubt. And
yep,
so our sisterhood or our community helps us. Communities are so important. Helps us in terms of really understanding for real what's happening and
yes,
to uplift you, right? So you have
absolutely.
your sisterhood, your community. What other things helped you in terms of your healing journey?
Yeah, and I think I like therapy was a big part of it as well, being able to just learn different strategies in terms of like being able to shift my mindset and think about things differently, or just
Mm-hmm.
notice my inner voice and how to redirect that when the inner
Mm-hmm.
voice was saying all these other things, right? Where it was just
Yeah.
like going left. Like it was just figured, knowing the tools to be able to like even just quiet. I haven't mastered meditation yet, but
Uh-huh.
like I feel like I was starting to get to a place where I was just starting to explore different ways to be able to just quiet the noise. And so even if it was
Good.
going for a walk, like that
Mm-hmm.
was something that really was not, going for a walk and not having my phone, or not being on my phone while I'm walking, just walking and
Yeah.
being present and being just I just started to just discover more of the things that I really, I guess, didn't really notice when I was so stressed out. And
Mm-hmm.
it was helpful in terms of centering me. But I would say like the biggest thing, and it was one of the reasons why I started doing the work that I do with Black Girls Teach, was because I saw the power of community and just the power in like Black women just like wrapping their
Mm-hmm.
arms around me and just like, all right, we're gonna do this. Like it's gonna be okay, right? And
Yeah.
that was just a powerful thing. And I don't think that if I wouldn't have had that, I don't think I would have been able to kind of just like keep pushing forward like I did. So it's really
Wow.
important. Community is just so important when you're going through these types of situations.
Absolutely. And when we think about our circle and our sisterhood, the people who are really showing us that they're there to support us, right? Because we can have people kind of in our circle, but they're not really there to support us.
Yeah.
But you'll come to find out who those people are. So those people who are really there to uplift you, it's very healing.
Yeah.
And also you talked about spending time alone, being quiet, sitting with your thoughts and recognizing, what are the thoughts that are really my thoughts and what are the thoughts that are coming from other people, right? So shutting that down a little bit more and listening more to your own thoughts. And I'm hoping and I'm thinking that what you're saying too is that this translated into the birth of your business, right?
Yeah.
So listening more into your voice.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about how your business developed? I know you started while you were working at these toxic environments, but how did it evolve?
Yeah, because I was always working with Black Girls on Black Girls Teach, and really just wanting it to be a conference for Black women educators where we're coming together, and Black women educators are just sharing their expertise, and that's what it started as. And what I started to realize was that these situations that I was going through, there were many other Black women who were going through very similar types of situations. But the difference was many of them were alone. Many of them didn't always have, people on their staff or friends who understood and things of that nature. And so we're losing a lot of Black women educators because of that. A lot of times because we start to believe
that can be traumatic too, right? When you're isolated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because there are some Black educators where they're the only Black educator in their whole school. So it's like there's a lot of different dynamics at play. And so all the different survival strategies that I learned, I realized that I had to learn the hard way. That's what I teach many educators now in terms of how to kind of preventing certain things. So we do a lot of work around communication. We do setting boundaries, just all the different things that I feel like I have learned over the years kind of really help to create the curriculum that we use now with a lot of the Black women educators that we are providing professional development to. And what I've seen, and I see some of them are in the chat, where it's just like the confidence. That's the biggest thing that I've seen by doing this type of work and having the community, because we have a community, we have a membership community where Black women are just pouring into one another, and it creates a certain level of confidence where it's like, now when you're in an environment like this, you start to be aware of it, and then you start to realize, oh no, I don't need to be here. I'm not the problem.
Right.
This is the problem. Let me get my resume together. Let me do what I need to do, because I can get a job somewhere else and make $20,000 more. And that's that.
Yeah.
And that's that. So teaching educators to be able to have the skills to do it, but providing the community so that they can tap into one another for those resources, but then also have the confidence. That's a game changer. And I'm working now with some first year teachers, and they're in their first year, and we're talking about a lot of these things, and they're getting so much confidence right out the gate. And it's just, that to me is a beautiful thing, because that I don't want educators to have to go through these types of situations. So if I can help to equip you with the schools, with the skills to be able to navigate that, then I did my job, and I'm happy to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because when you know your worth, right, you won't tolerate being in a situation that doesn't affirm your worth.
Absolutely.
And so you're teaching women that, and you're teaching them the importance of working together and being in community, being in sisterhood.
Yeah.
So how do people get in contact with you? You talk about a membership. Tell us more specifically, what are the different services that you offer, and how will people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so we have a membership called the Empowerment Circle, and so it opens up every quarter. So our next membership window is in mid-June, and we provide professional development for Black women educators. We provide community for them. We provide opportunities for them to be able to lead workshops and sessions and get feedback. We're starting to have in-person meetups, really just providing them with, that community that is so needed. And we've seen so many of our members have just taken off with just, in terms of their confidence. So many are launching businesses. They're just doing all these amazing things. So we have that in terms of that's like our affinity space. And
Mm-hmm.
Black Girls Teach as an organization, we provide professional development workshops to schools and teacher prep organizations around the country, in the areas of communication. So sometimes it's affinity based, where it's solely for Black women educators, but we also provide
Mm-hmm.
professional development for all educators, because I strongly feel like everyone can benefit from the expertise of Black women.
True
So
that.
everybody can benefit from it. And
True
even when we
that.
center
Because we're
Black
only
women,
so many in number, right? And
right,
the majority of the teachers are not Black, so
right.
they need to know how to work with our kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like when we're centering Black women at the core, I feel like it will impact everyone positively. So
Absolutely.
like a lot of, so I work with some schools where, the staff is predominantly white. And then I work with some organizations where we're working with solely the Black women educators. So we provide different trainings based upon the school's needs. And then I also
Mm.
do coaching for educators that want to go into entrepreneurship, and so just helping them to be able to create those businesses that they desire and leverage social media to be able to do that. Because I will say, like, that was social media was an outlet for me, in the sense of
Mm.
where it was like, okay, you don't want to listen to me in my building, I'll share it on social media, and I'll share. And I found in my community, like, people, the things that I was sharing, I realized it was resonating with. So I started to realize, okay, so like what I'm saying actually really does make sense. And so now I
Wow.
started to, because this platform was just built off of just me straight up just being authentically myself and sharing these same feelings that I shared when I was in working in schools, but having
Mhm.
the platform and the voice to be able to do it and people actually listening. So I share with educators where, many educators have so much expertise and it's not appreciated in their school. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. You can find, there's going to be another place, whether it's
Yeah.
another school or you creating your own platform where you can share these things and people will appreciate it and value you. So I try
You
to
know,
equip educators with those tools to be able to do that.
absolutely. And Deidre, you said something in terms of, I remember what you said earlier in terms of you felt like you were too much in that certain environment, right?
Yes.
But when you were on social media, you learned that people really wanted to hear and they really valued what you had to say. And
Right.
that gave you a sense of confidence to move on and doing your own thing. And
Absolutely.
I remember we were on a panel and I think I started following you at some point, and I'm pretty sure your post said, I was a teacher for so many years and people tried to get me to shut up about my ideas. And now they pay me to come in and do PDs, right? So boom, in
They
your
do.
face, right?
They do. And I mean, that's what I tell these teachers. I'm like, listen, like, they might not be listening to you now, but believe me, they will. They will. And that's
Yeah.
what happens now. Now it's like, okay, like the same type of organizations that would have a problem with the things that I say are the ones that are cutting the checks. So I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's enough, right? And what's so interesting too is that when we're given the message that we're too much, that's a red flag, right?
Yes.
Because wouldn't you want to really build upon the talent of people that you're working with? And
Yes.
why are you trying to dampen their light? So that's a bad sign right there. So
Absolutely.
that's showing you, no, you're not too much. This environment is too limited for you, right? You're too big for that environment, right?
Absolutely.
So it's important to have that different shift. And how will people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so people, if you are interested in getting in contact with me, definitely make sure you're following this page, Black Girls Teach. You can email us at hello@blackgirlsteach.com. If you are an educator or an entrepreneur that wants to learn more about entrepreneurship and leveraging social media, I have my Teach Me D page that I started a couple months ago, just to be able to provide solely entrepreneurship type of things on that page. But definitely, like, a lot of the work that I do really just intersects in both areas. So hello@blackgirlsteach.com is the best way to reach out if you have any questions or if you are in need of any additional support.
Awesome. And Deidra, I just want to say thank you again for joining. So I just reached out to you like, hey, you want to be a
Yes.
guest? And
Thank you for having
you are
me.
the, so is that?
I said, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Like when I saw that one post, I was like, I got to reach out to this woman, right? And you're like, you are an example of like my shirt, Undaunted, right? So it's like, I went to Spelman and we talk about undaunted by the fight. So we are undaunted by the fight, in terms of education, mental health, whatever fields that we're in, we have to be undaunted because people are going to try to fight us in different ways and try to take us down and try to make us undermine ourselves and all these different things. But we're saying, no, we're undaunted. We're going to keep fighting. We'll find a different way to fight. Right. And guess what? We're going to find a different way to fight in which we are affirmed. We're happier. We're doing better. Right. And we're reaching more people. So we have to keep that in mind. And we appreciate having people like you, Deidra, because you're like Harriet Tubman. Right. So you're like the person kind of showing us ways out of these situations that are oppressive. So thankful for you. And I just want to say to the audience, thank you again for tuning in. If you tuned in the first round when we were having the technical issues, I really appreciate you kind of sticking it out. And just as I mentioned before that I'm going to continue having these conversations, talking to Black women about toxic work environments. We are going to be transitioning, also talking about joy and how we as Black women reconnect to our joy, because many times these toxic jobs, it drains our joy, right? And we deserve joy. So we're going to be talking about joy soon too. So I want to thank you for tuning in. If you want to see the other videos I've done, please go to my YouTube channel, Lifting as We Climb Consulting, Wellness Services. As I mentioned, also, I do have a job coaching program for Black women who are interested in leaving toxic jobs, but there's a lot of stuff that we need to process so we're able to let go of it. So all that toxicity, we process it, we process that grief so that we're in a better position to really be in an affirming professional environment. So again, thank you so much, Deidra.
Welcome.
And I want to say to everyone, have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.